we're going to take a look at inequalities. Inequalities are things greater than or less than. So I'm going to be using the different arrows, greater than, less than. The easiest way is to remember that the mouth eats the bigger number. Imagine Pac-Man or some mouth. I want to start off simply by saying this. If you could you list all the numbers greater than 4? If you started to list now, when would you finish the list? I hope you understand that you would never finish the list. The numbers greater than 4 is an infinite amount. It's impossible to write them all out. So if I would start, a lot of kids would be starting their list this way: 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and they would go this way. But my question would be, are you sure there's nothing right after 4 that goes before 5? Like 4.1, 4.2, 4.3. What about numbers that are smaller than this? Like 4.01 or 4.001. So realize, even after the 4, there's an infinite amount of numbers that fit right after 4. What happens in math is you get questions that will say, show me all the numbers bigger than 4. But it's impossible to do it because it's an infinite amount. So what we will do, by the way, they'll say a variable like n. What number, we don't know what n is, but what number is bigger than 4? Because it's impossible to write them all out, what we're going to do is show a picture. Easiest way is to use a number line. Sometimes you're given a number line, sometimes you have to make one. It doesn't matter where 0's at. 0 could be here, in the middle, over there. Typically we put 0 in the middle. But what they want to see are all the numbers bigger than 4. So what I'm going to worry about is the number 4. This mark represents the number 4, which means 0 is over here. All the numbers bigger than 4, I'm going to shade in. All the numbers bigger than 4, I'm going to shade. Now, how do I show that my shading goes on forever? How did I show that this number line goes on forever? I used an arrow point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an arrow point on my shading. Now the trick comes here. How do I shade all the numbers up until 4, but I'm not allowed to choose 4? Because ask yourself, is 4 bigger than 4? No, it's not. So I'm not allowed to use 4 itself. The smallest number I'm allowed is 4 point infinite amount of zeros with the 1. So take your pencil and get as close as you can to the line, but don't touch it. You're not allowed to. Shade, 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 shade. And then what happens is your pencil tip is not sharp enough, so then you go over to the sharpener and you sharpen it, and then it's sharper, and then you can get closer. And then you get a magnifying glass and look closer and make sure that you got all the white space filled in, but you're not allowed to touch the line. You're not allowed to touch the line that marks off 4. This is impossible to do. You can't physically do it. So what do we do in math to represent that you got as close as you could to the 4 without touching it? We put an open circle on top of the mark that says 4. This is the picture to represent all of the numbers that are greater than 4. What if I wanted all of the numbers less than 4? Well, I would draw a number line. I would put a 4 here. I would put an open circle around it because I'm not allowed to equal 4, and I would shade everything that is less than. All the numbers bigger than 4, shades to the right. Why? Because the right is the bigger. Smaller is to the left. Now there's an easy way to do these when you start to do a bunch of them. Which way is this arrow pointing? To the right. Which way did your shading go? To the right. Which way does this arrow point? To the left. Which way does this shading point? also to the left. This arrow rule will always work. It will always work when the variable must be first. If the variable comes first, then you can immediately shade the way the arrow points. M is bigger than -10. Put -10 on your line. The variable came first from left to right, so I can shade to the right. Shade, put an arrow on top of your shading so it continues. I'm not allowed to be touching the -10 line, so I put an open circle. It's that simple. The issue will come in when the variable isn't first. 5 less than m. My variable does not come first, so I cannot shade everything this way. There's an easy fix. What if you want to flip it? What if I do want to say, you know what? Okay, I'm going to put the m first, and I'm going to put the 5 second. You can flip the number and the variable. But what else do you think should flip because you flip the number and the variable? I hope you're thinking the same way I am. The arrow was pointing left, now the arrow is pointing right. So you can flip them so that the arrow rule will work. All right, here's 5. I'm allowed to get as close as I can to the 5, but I'm not allowed to touch it. Which way does my shading go? It goes to the right. Why? Because I want all the numbers bigger than 5. These are inequalities, finding numbers that are bigger than or less than a designated number. The next part of this is a different symbol. Not only can I have greater than or less than, which by the way gave me an open circle, I'm also allowed to have this symbol. This is a combination symbol. This was formed by the greater than sign and the equal sign joining together and becoming greater than or equal to. So I want all the numbers that are bigger than, but also equal to 8. So I mark off 8 and say name numbers that are bigger than 8. Remember, you can also name the number that's equal to 8. So if I pick numbers bigger, 8.1, 8.2, 12, 100, 2,000, 11,576, but am I getting as close as I can? Yes. As close as I can? Yes. Why? Because I'm also allowed to shade in the 8 itself. How do I show that I shaded in the 8 itself? I use a filled in circle or a closed circle. So your symbols break down as this. Greater than equal to, less than equal to, now has a closed circle. So these are my 2 options. Everything else still applies. Arrow rule goes to the right, arrow goes to the left, I shade to the left. You have to now look at the symbol. Does it have a line under it? If it does have a line under it, shade it in. Why? Because it's allowed to be equal. That's it. Inequalities, very short, very sweet.